Hey guys, welcome back to the series called All You Need to Know About Modifiers. And today we're going to go ahead and look at the Decimate modifier. And we'll go through each and every function that it can provide and its facilities. So, why don't we get right into it, right? So, let's go ahead and open a new session here. So, we end up with this default cube. I'm going to delete the camera and the light. Now we have this cube here, but to show you what a decimate modifier does, I need more geometry than just five faces, right? So let me actually go ahead and add a subdivision surface modifier, and I'm gonna subdivide it like, let's say, four times, right? And we'll apply it. Now, don't no need to worry about what I did because I'll be creating a separate video on subdivision surface modifier where I'll go through in detail as to what that modifier does. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, for now we have this cube and we have all of these faces here, which we can work with, right? So let's go ahead and add a decimate modifier. So to add that, go to the modifier properties, go to add modifier and decimate modifier. Now, what does a decimate modifier do and when do we use it? So decimate modifier basically decimates your geometry. Basically, what it does is that it can be used to reduce the number of vertices and faces that you have in your geometry, uh, which which could be very useful when you are actually doing things like sculpting and stuff like that, and you don't have time to topologize. Read topology, in short, those who don't know, is just basically making sure that all the faces that you have is in your mesh is quad. But if you don't have time for that, and you're not going to use your sculpt or your model for animating or organic animation, as I would like to call it, you can just simply use a decimate modifier. It helps you reduce the number of faces and saves a lot of processing time that it's going to take for you to render it in case you don't do it. Right. So there are three options here, which is collapse, unsubdivide, and planar. Right. So we'll go through each of these options. So the very first one is collapse. Now, collapse basically just goes ahead and gives you a ratio to what do you say, to decimate your geometry to, right? Like basically, let me first very first thing I'll do is I'll add the wireframe onto our mesh or object so that you guys know what's going on. So just to add that, you can just simply click here, viewport overlay, and just click on wireframe, and there you go. You can see the entire geometry in your mesh. Now to go ahead and like if so how this works is that if it's 1 means it has all of its faces. If it's zero point 0.5 means it has 50% of its faces, and if it's 0 then basically it just has one face, right? So that's how it works. Now to go ahead and use this, we can just simply drag it up and down, and it can just change the number of faces depending on that, right? And as you can see that it does not like it does a good job retaining the shape of your model, but it doesn't do a good job of maintaining quads or maintaining faces that have four sides or four vertices, right? So it can just randomly merge faces and just create a very ugly looking topology, if you want to talk in sculpting terms. So basically that's what it does, but it's a really fast way to reduce the geometry in your uh, object without spending too much time on it, right? So if I so as you can see, the number of faces reduced. Now the second thing that you can do is symmetry. Now if you click on this, uh, the faces that got created on the x-axis would be replicated to the x-axis again. If you click on y-axis, the same thing happens, but on the y-axis, and z-axis is of course the same thing happens on the z-axis, right? So you can control if you want to symmetrize the way it's reducing faces. So like for example, if you see these faces over here are just mirroring each other, right? So That's the function of this symmetry option here. The next thing you can do is triangulate. Now what it does is that it makes sure there's any new faces that you're creating is a triangle and there is no other shape in your mesh altogether. So triangulate is going to be really useful if you just want to make sure that there is evenness in the new topology that you're creating on your mesh, right? So that's the benefit of that. And the last one is the vertex group. So vertex group works similarly as it does in any other way. So to add objects to a certain vertex group, all you do is you select the vertices that you want to add to that vertex group. Then you go to the object data properties, click on this plus sign right next to the vertex groups and click on assign. As soon as you do that, this vertex group got assigned to this group, or you can just name it anything. Let's name new. Okay, so it got assigned to that. Now I'll come back here, I'll select that vertex group, and as you can see that the vertices that I selected are getting affected depending on the factor that I've put here, right? So they will be affected a lot more as compared to the anything that's not in their group, right? So you can just simply use them to uh, control the way it's decimating your object, right? So that's pretty much what the collapse option is used for. Now moving on to the unsubdivide option, right? So this is going to be used to, like, this is just a workaround of this option. When you go to your edit mode, right click and can you hold on, the option should be here. Yeah, can you see this option unsubdivide? That's what basically this does, right? So uh, it will go ahead, so every two iterations that you add here is one subdivision. So basically if I right click and if I go to the edit mode, right click and subdivide, the number of faces that it creates, you have to reduce those faces, you have to increase two iterations, right? That's how it's designed. Now don't go too far with it because you might just end up with a triangle or something. But yeah, basically that's what it does. It just unsubdivides, it reduces the number of faces in that way, and just make sure that you're not ending up with any weird shapes, right? So that's pretty much what it does. Now let's move on to planar. Now what does planar option do? Now planar option is basically something that is controlled by this angle limit here, right? So basically the more you drag it, like the lesser it is, the more faces it's gonna affect. The higher it is, the less faces it's gonna affect, right? So anything that is above this angle is gonna be affected when you are decimating your object, right? Now there are different options here, and what does these options do? So when you click on normal, means it's basically affecting everything here, right? But when you click on material, right, now this can be really useful when you're actually working with what do you say, sculptures and stuff like that, where you have spent time to go ahead and color certain places on your object. And like for example, I'll just add this what do you say, I'll add this texture in here, and the original texture I'll just make it metallic. So now there are two textures on my object, right? So I'll go back to my decimate modifier and I'll just go to normal. Now can you see, let's actually hide the modifier. So basically right now, as you can see, this is how the modifier is applied. But as soon as I add the decimate modifier, the way it was there originally, the way the texture was applied originally got changed. The like the size of it changed, the look of it changed, which sometimes we don't want, right? So when you click on material, what it does is that it tries its best to retain that shape of the faces that you applied that material to. So basically that's what the job of this is. Seam again goes ahead and make sure that this, so you have to define seams. So if you do control E, you can, sorry, you can mark seam or clear seam, and the next option over there is sharp. Same procedure, you can mark sharp or clear sharp from here. And once you mark seam, right, so it will make sure that it's not unsubdividing this entire piece. So it will leave this piece alone and it will just subdivide everything else, as you can see here, right? So that's how mark seam and mark sharp work. So basically if I go here and I do control E and I do mark sharp, now it will not go ahead and subdivide it, no matter what happens. So that's the basic purpose of it. UVs is just basically tries to retain the UV map that you apply to your object. So UV editing is another different subject altogether, but basically let's assume that you created a UV map for these specific section of your object, right? So if you select UV in this and then change it, so it will go ahead and just make sure that anything that has a UV on that is not affected. So that's how it works. If you just click on all boundaries, it will just go ahead and decimate it regardless. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it as to what a decimate modifier can do. But it can be used for many other things, honestly, not just that. You can just simply use it to create interesting geometry. Like if you want to go ahead and do something on the lines of abstract arts and stuff, this modifier can be used for it, right? Like as you can see, the shapes that are being created is just totally random, and you can just simply use this modifier to create something interesting. Like for example, let's do this. So there is a edge split option. So what it does is basically splits all the edges into its own separate objects. Like basically this is what it does, right? So you can see it just looks amazing, right? With different shapes and everything, and it will just be a different kind of abstract object that gets created with this. But yeah, I guess that's about it. You can experiment it with it yourself and just go ahead and try out the different options that are available. So I thank you so much for hanging out. I really hope that this video was helpful. If it was, don't forget to drop a like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next video.